11:30 to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Burke,
Here.
Councilmember Wilkinson, present. Mayor Cooper,
Here.
Councilmember Carapiet. Here. For the record, Councilmember Mark is absent.
Great, thank you. And we'll go on to our city council reports. Anyone have a report? City council members?
I do not.
You do not? Do you?
Well, I'll give a short TAM report. I attended the TAM meeting at the end of July. And it was very interesting. They're looking at our Measure AA and how the funds are being allocated and looking at redoing some of the allocation and looking at how they have roads, the cost allocated, and looking at changing that to allocating more money to major roads that will address the impact of the additional housing in Marin. It is interesting because TAM has a lot that goes on, and it has a very long history. So I'm just learning to catch up on the background and the history of everything, because it's a continuation of everything, but it's a very impactful committee that impacts funding that comes directly to Belvedere and to other communities in Marin. So that's my report.
Thanks. Okay, so my only meeting that I attended was actually with Councilmember Carapiet, who's chair of the Be Ready Belvedere Committee. And we did have a meeting in July, and got a lot of exciting things going on there, including a go bag event where the community can come and pick up a go bag that then they can fill, and we'll start filling out some of the items that you'd want to put in it. So we're excited about that. We'll be putting more information in the Belvedere Breeze. And just because we didn't have much going on in July, but in August, in a week or so, I'm going to be attending a meeting with Vivalon to discuss organizing a volunteer driver program for our community seniors, and Tiburon and Mill Valley representatives will be joining me. So I think I'm looking forward to that and hopeful that I can report good results. And next Wednesday, Councilmember Carapiet and I are touring PG&E's Hazard Awareness Warning Center in San Ramon. So I wanted to mention that. And I'm also, for anyone interested, meeting with residents on Peninsula Road tomorrow at 11 o'clock. If anyone wants to attend to discuss coyote impact on Peninsula Road specifically, but if anybody in the community wants to attend, it's tomorrow, so there wasn't a lot of notice.
What's the location, John?
It's at Ruby's house, 48 Peninsula. 11 a.m. I know there's been I've been hearing a lot of activity, and quickly I'll just say that there were 3 to 4 pups born in the spring, so they are now becoming, in quotes, teenagers, and so they're more curious. They're out there. They're realizing there's a community. They're just leaving their parents for the first time, and so they are more visible. They're naive. If anyone runs into a coyote, please don't hesitate to haze them in a nice way, especially the young ones. Just clapping and yelling at them will scare them, and they'll learn that they need to be fearful of humans, which is our goal. But they should, according to coyote biology, they should be dissipating to find their own territory in about another month, which is what happened last year. And then we go back down to the couple, the parents. Okay, so are there any questions from the audience about or comments about council reports? Any on Zoom?
Mayor Cooper, I see none.
Okay, great, thanks. And then city manager report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Cooper. I do have a few relevant updates for the council and the community to be aware of. I'll start out with news on the police department staffing matter. You recall in July that Chief Wu and I provided an update on hiring. We mentioned that the retirement of the police sergeant led to freeing us up to pursue hiring a replacement officer to fill a vacancy. Jason has since conducted several interviews, and we're moving ahead with a background check on one candidate for the full-time position. Interviews for the reserve officer recruitments have been ongoing, and that position or positions will remain open until filled. As noted, it will take at least a few months to conduct background checks and get the new candidates fully trained. In July, the council expressed an interest in an interim solution to bridge the gap while new hires are undergoing field training. So since July's council meeting, we've reached out to the county sheriff department. They've helped us in the past by providing interim deputies, most recently around 2019 when we hired for a new police chief role. Fortunately, they are open to providing a deputy for 3 to 6 months. That deputy would wear a Belvedere uniform and drive a Belvedere police cruiser while on duty. We circulated the draft agreement for services between us and the county, and it's currently being reviewed by the county's legal department. We're expecting to hear back hopefully later this week. Under this agreement, Chief Wu would have the final say in who's assigned to work in Belvedere. We're expecting the cost to be somewhere between $60,000 and $120,000 for 6 months of coverage. This will be able to apply some salary savings to bring down the overall cost. However, in the meantime, this will be paid out of the PD's personnel budget. We will bring a budget amendment to council in December at the time we reconcile any unassigned fund balances from the previous budget year. But in parallel, we are still pursuing the Tiburon nighttime coverage model, and we're working with the Belvedere Police Union on details through a meet and confer process. So all in all, I think that's some promising and positive developments. We'll keep you and the community updated on how it progresses. Next, an update on Mallard Point. And on July 22nd, the city issued an incompleteness letter for the bulkhead replacement and demolition permits, which is now posted on their website for anyone who's interested in viewing it. Since then, staff has been in regular contact with the Mallard team and is working to schedule meetings with the city engineer to review and address the outstanding items. The Mallard team has indicated that if permits are issued as planned, they expect to begin the project in the spring of 2026. So that's a rough idea of when construction could possibly begin. Internally, we're still working to select a project manager to run the day-to-day for the project. We've reached out to several firms for proposals. In addition, one of the project's approval condition requires the city to hire a relocation consultant to ensure that all eligible tenants receive the relocation benefits they're entitled to. This will be completed at the applicant's expense. We've contacted 2 consultants, received 1 proposal, and they're waiting on the second. As always, we will post any new information or submittals on the city's website. Moving on, the last week or so has been very busy for our public works departments. I want to thank the community for its patience with road closures and detours. The contractor is wrapping up slurry seal work today and tomorrow. This work represents a big part of the city's budget, and naturally, how we spend and prioritize those dollars is important. One of the city council's initiatives for this year is to begin an assessment of all city buildings and infrastructure to better understand the long-term maintenance needs for the city. This is a 2-year project, which will establish a baseline for going forward. We're now finalizing the scope of work for the consultant, Bureau Veritas, to complete a conditions assessment survey of the city's buildings, various systems, parks, amenities, and other identified physical assets. This work will involve 3 steps. They're going to identify and document the present condition of these assets. They're going to categorize and prioritize deficient conditions and associated corrective actions. And then they'll establish anticipated renewal and replacement costs for things that were analyzed. Staff will work with Bureau Veritas to include all city assets in the year-by-year analysis of capital needs for a 20-year period. Overall, I think it's going to be a very useful tool for long-range planning and budgeting. And then finally, a quick note on the agenda this evening. I'll flag for those listening in tonight that there's a proposal to change the meeting time of the City Council and Planning Commission meetings from 6:30 to 5:30 p.m. The City Council time change is on the consent calendar as administrative policy update. The Planning Commission adjustment is an ordinance change and is under other scheduled items. They are related, but also separate items on the agenda in case anyone was curious. But that's all I have for now. I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Do we have any council questions?
Yeah, thank you, Robert. So city council will go into effect next month for those that are listening?
City Council next month, correct, if it's
Start at
approved.
5:30.
Yeah, Planning Commission a little bit longer.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Going back to the first update on police. So what is your goal in terms of having both of those implemented?
Our goal is to work with the county Sheriff's Department to
Mhm.
try and get that in place as soon as possible.
So do you think it's realistic to get that done before the next city council meeting?
I think it is, and that's why I'm giving a more thorough update this time. I
Yeah.
don't, whether it comes as a contract approval later on, or if it can be done at the administrative level, we're still determining that. But I wanted the flexibility to be able to provide information and updates
Great.
as well as the budgeting. If we do end up hiring that on a short-term basis in the next week or so, we can do that without council's
That's
approval.
great, because I know people are anxious to have those resources. And
Yep.
then for the Tiburon night coverage, what about that?
Yeah, I'd say that's still progressing in parallel, although it may be at a little bit of a slower pace. Our focus has been on getting the county spun up.
Mhm.
But Jason and myself are working with the BPOA. We had one meet and confirm meeting, and we've got a couple of homework items that the BPOA is actually helping us with. So we're working in tandem with them.
Okay, I just want to underscore that's something that we very much want to do.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
I have a comment, it's not really a question,
Sure.
but I have to also applaud the Public Works, the people they used for the re-slurring or the slurring of the roads. It seems that the material they used this time seems to be a little bit better than what's been used in the past. There seems to be less
Loose- loose
stuff
backfill, yeah.
that gets all over. It seems to be more solid and doesn't have that excess material that runs off into the drains and contaminates the lagoon and everything else. So the contractor did a very good job, and they were very efficient. So congratulations to Public Works for doing a good job.
So I'll pass that on. Thank you.
Councilmember Wilkinson.
I just have an additional follow-up on the police discussion.
Yeah.
And I apologize, I wasn't here last month, so I might have missed some of this, but so it seems like the police department is moving ahead with a new officer and a reserve officer. Is that does that preclude a Tiburon nighttime model, or is that in parallel with? Because they seem to be one or the other, or am I misunderstanding?
It's in parallel with that. So
So we might be in a position where we would have 6 police, a reserve officer, and still move into a model where we have nighttime cover from Tiburon.
yeah, I should clarify. What we're working on with the county is temporary coverage to span the gap between when those officers are fully trained. We're going to have to hire them, do
No,
a
I-
background, and they're going to be working for
Yeah,
us
I
for
under-
several weeks.
So, but I understand that, but in your Jason's close to hiring a full-time police officer, which will require training, et cetera, and
Right.
looking to recruit a reserve officer. So we'd be at 6 plus a reserve officer. That's the goal. So with that, that seems to financially preclude us also being in a contract with Tiburon for nighttime cover, or did I not understand?
I think by the time that Tiburon, I can't speak to how long it's going to take to get that agreement in place with Tiburon. A lot of it just, depends on us working with the union here in the city and getting that, any issues, concerns they have resolved. That could be a couple of months away or perhaps even longer. So I think in the short term, the idea would be to have the county come in on an interim basis. It'd be a month-to-month agreement. And we'd be able to terminate that agreement if, for say, 2 months in, we end up having a model that's working for us. But we are considering the costs in all of this. Like I mentioned, there are going to be some cost savings when we factor in the the time between, I should say, the money saved by not having a full-time sergeant in place right now. And after we complete all the background investigations, that's probably going to be another few weeks before we have that person available. So it'll be 1 month, perhaps 2 months of savings from that, which could also be applied.
Okay, but as you say, there'll be a budget amendment come through at some point, so we'll be able to see apples for apples in terms of how much these proposals are likely to add to our budget.
Yeah, I think that's the idea. One solution, like I mentioned, could be, let's determine what the cost is, patch up any hiring deficiencies, and then come back in December with the final cost. At that point, the cake is already baked in a sense, but we could come sooner to city council and provide some solutions. I think in the interim, though, we want to be able to, like I say, spin these up, get it started even on a month-to-month basis, and then provide council with an update in the next month or two.
Okay, that will make sense. I mean, I think I would just stress as well that I think there's been an expression from the council that we'd really like to see that Tiburon model fully explored. And not as an afterthought when you've already effectively locked in a different solution.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
And if you don't mind, I would just like to underscore with respect to that Tiburon night coverage, that is subject to meet and confer discussions that Robert's already mentioned, which is not fully a process within our control, but obviously we do need to go take that all the way through the required steps. Thank you.
And I just have one follow-up question and clarification. When we talk about the reserve officer is sort of a part-time officer. I mean, it's somebody who's retired and can only work so many hours in a year. So they're not really a full sixth officer that we're hiring. It's more kind of like we'll have 5.5.
Yeah, that's correct. We're going to pull them in as needed. I think we've seen from the model, I know we're starting to get into detail here, but we've seen from the model that 5 works as long as we have 5 people working. But when we have 1 or 2 go out, then that's when we get pinched.
Mhm.
So yes, the idea is that this person would be called upon as needed. I think the city's cost would be just maintaining that officer in terms of training and equipment, even when they're not being utilized.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience with questions or comments on the city manager's report? Any on Zoom?
I see none.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go out of order right now, if no one minds. We have a visitor from PG&E, and rather than having him wait until the open forum at the end of the meeting, I'm going to bump open forum up now for him, and then I can take it up again at the end for anyone else who might be waiting for that time. So I just need to read something before you can get started. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to briefly address the city council on any matter that does not appear on this agenda, but is within the city council's subject matter jurisdiction. Upon being recognized by the mayor, please limit your oral statement to no more than 3 minutes. Under the Brown Act, council members may not deliberate or take action on items not on tonight's agenda. Matters that may warrant a more lengthy presentation or council consideration may be placed on the agenda for further discussion at a later meeting. Thank you. Welcome. Would you please introduce yourself to us?
Thank you very much.
Here we go. Is that working? All right. So thank you very much, Mayor and council members. My name is Mark Van Gorder. I am your local government affairs representative for Marin, and I cover Napa County as well. I've been doing this for about 12 years. I am making the rounds, if you will. I have 18 different jurisdictions. So try as best I can to visit council chambers at least once or twice a year. There isn't usually a lot of issues or business to conduct here in Belvedere. So I thought, I'll just come speak under public comment and greatly appreciate the courtesy. I did leave my business cards. I think most of you receive my emails, especially as we're getting closer into fire season. We want to make sure that people are aware and prepared. Today is August 11th, so I will just use the date as an opportunity to remind people to call 811. That is our number. If people are digging, we have a lot of what we call dig-ins in the county of Marin for people who are building fences, planting trees, flowers, other in-ground work. And so just encouraging people to call that number first and be prepared to know what's underneath the ground. Hitting an electric line, a sewer line is particularly unpleasant. A gas line can be dangerous, and that happens more than we'd like. On top of that, I know that we have some inconveniences for some of the work that we're doing in the area, and we're really working to dial that in to make sure that the residents know that we're showing up to perform some work on some of the tight streets in town. Make sure that people know we're coming, that they have a plan if they need to move a car, get out of the way. And we haven't done our best. We can do better. And we're always looking for feedback. So I welcome those phone calls. My phone number is on the cards for you. For staff, we have a great working relationship with staff. And so just love to keep that dialogue open, invite anyone to, we can meet over coffee, lunch, or just here at the office if that's more convenient to hear about issues of concern. So thank you again for that courtesy, and I wish you all a good evening.
Thank you. It's great to put a face to those emails that we're getting from you. So thanks again for doing that. Very helpful. Okay. Do you want me to keep going with open forum, or should I move on?
You can see if anyone else wants to speak at this
Okay.
time. But
Anyone
if not, we can go to consent.
here want to speak at this time? No. Is there anyone on Zoom at this time?
Mayor Cooper, there are no hands raised.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, then we will move on to the consent calendar. The consent calendar consists of items that are considered to be non-controversial unless any item is specifically removed by any member of council, staff, or public. The consent calendar will be adopted by one motion. Council will take public comment on all items on the consent calendar when the calendar is called. Do any council members have a question on any item or want to pull any item?
I have a question on 4D.
4D,
So I guess I should pull it.
okay. Is it a question that requires a lot of discussion? Or, I think I have a question too, so it's probably better. Okay, so we'll pull 4D, and then I'd like to have a motion to adopt items 4A, 4B, 4C, 4E, 4F, and G on the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, thank you. Would you like to ask your question about 4D?
Sure. My question is on Article 2 on, the page doesn't have a number, but anyway, it's Article 2. under
Excuse me,
the-
my apologies for interrupting, but I'm not sure if we took public comment on those items.
Oh, we didn't.
Okay.
Um,
So if we would just briefly check if there's any public on those other
Right.
items.
Sorry,
think-
I
I
put
think we
it in
can
the
make
wrong
some-
spot. I
No
thought
problem.
we got to ask the questions first and then, but you're right, because we
I
voted
think you
on it.
pulled 4D.
Right, right. Okay. So I'll open the consent calendar. If anyone has a question on any item here on Zoom. Okay. Thank you. Back to you.
Okay, back to me. So Article 2, my question is that in 2.1, they crossed out for the students of Reed School District. And then it goes on to pursuing through a funding mechanism in the, et cetera, in the geographical area of the Reed School District. So my question is the bus service being restricted also to the geological area of the geographical area, geographical area of the Reed School District?
I can probably answer that. So this change has been put in because until this coming year, the program has only serviced the Reed Union School District. Starting in a couple of weeks' time, it will also be providing service to St. Hilary's School and after-school programming from the ranch. And so it's just they've removed that it's exclusively for Reed Union School District, but it is still only covering the area, the geographical area of Reed Union School District, which spreads obviously into East Quarter Madeira.
Okay, I sort of got that, and I guess the issue I was having as I read this was that it didn't tie it into that second sentence where it was in the geographical area of the Reed Union School District. So I don't know if it makes a big difference. I mean, I was thinking that we are just talking about the geographical area of the Reed School District. We're not talking about bus service to Mill Valley or anything like that. So does the word "and" need to be there, and pursuing within the geographical area? I mean, that's just was my comment. I mean, I don't know if others read it more clearly than I did.
You're suggesting and in 2.1 in the
Well,
last sentence?
I'm just thinking that it ties it to the geographical area so that people don't think that we're going to be doing bus service outside. Because that's where the potential tax could be, was just within the geographical area. And I'm assumed this was through the, done through the Joint Powers Authority.
I don't really understand. So yes, all of this was, has been approved through the Tiburon Peninsula Traffic Relief Agency Board, and it's just coming to the relevant underlying agencies for approval.
So the question is, would it make it clearer that we're just talking about the geographical area? And I don't know if it's too complicated, if there's so many other people involved. That's just my comment.
Yeah.
Where would you insert the and? Sorry.
Just where it has the red crossed out for the students of the Reed Union School District, I would just say, and pursuing within the geographical area, Reed School. I don't know if it's, absolutely necessary. I just think that perhaps whoever wrote it
Yeah.
didn't quite think it quite through.
I think what we could perhaps do is take your feedback and present it to the JPA, at least, the chair of the JPA and perhaps our legal counsel to see if it's worth clarifying that. And if there's, clarity here where it could be a problem in the future. I think that's worth pointing out, but in terms of changing it now on the record,
Yeah, no,
would
I
have
mean,
to be-
I'm fine
yeah.
with everything. It was just that particular
okay,
sentence kind of threw me that it wasn't tied together.
sure, got it. Yeah, I can pass on that feedback.
And then my only question was under Article 4, under quorum and required votes, the sentence reads, the following 2 items for business will require, and the 2 items of business was removed. So the following will require a unanimous vote of the directors to place a tax on the ballot. And what was crossed out was, and a decision to pursue any other source of funding pursuant to this agreement. So I'm just making sure that that just means it won't require a unanimous vote to look for other sources, not that you're not going to look for other sources.
That's absolutely correct. It's just
Okay.
that sometimes we haven't had fully 6 board members attend meetings. And so that clause has been problematic where we are this year and last year. We've received very significant grants from the at the state level, which are newly pursued, and we wouldn't necessarily be able to do those right now if all 6 board members aren't present at meetings.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you were still looking for outside funding. So that's great, thank you. Okay, in that case, can I have a motion to adopt? Oh, any questions? Anyone on Zoom with any questions?
I see none.
Okay, can I have a motion to adopt item 4D?
I make a motion to adopt item 4D in the consent calendar.
Second,
Second,
all in favor?
aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. We'll now move on to our first item on the public hearing, which is 5A, an introduction and first reading of an ordinance amending chapter 19.79 accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units to conform to state law. And do we have a staff report?
We do, from Rebecca Markwick, who's joining us over Zoom.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Cooper and council members. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. The item before you tonight is, includes amendments to chapter 19 in the municipal code for ADUs and JADUs. These amendments are in response to updated state regulations to ensure that the city of Belvedere municipal code complies with state requirements. Why aren't my slides changing? Well, we might be slide free here, unless Beth, you want to pull it up for me? I'm sorry. I'll
It's okay. Yeah,
continue
I
with
have
my
it.
presentation. Let me stop sharing. I'll just continue. As you know, an accessory dwelling unit is a living unit that is either attached to a main residence or in a separate structure and has exterior access, a kitchen, and a bathroom. A junior accessory dwelling unit, or JADU, is smaller, located within a primary residence, contains minimal kitchen improvements, and need not include a separate bathroom. ADUs and JADUs provide increased opportunities for lower cost housing while maintaining a neighborhood's character. Because Belvedere is a built-out community and has limited opportunities for additional housing, JADUs and ADUs provide important opportunities for the city to meet its RHNA requirements. Thank you, Beth. Next slide, please. State law limits local review of ADU and JADU applications when compared to most other development applications. Notably, all applications for an ADU or JADU that comply with state requirements and a local municipal code shall be granted or denied only upon a staff level ministerial review for compliance. Public hearings and design review are specifically prohibited by state law for ministerial approvals. The city's ADU and JADU ordinances must be updated to incorporate recent revisions in state law, which govern both ADUs and JADUs. These new state laws mandate revisions to the city's ordinances that impact the building and zoning standards, which are detailed in your staff report and above on this slide. So at the July 15th Planning Commission hearing, they conducted a public hearing on these proposed amendments and adopted a resolution recommending that the City Council adopt the zoning amendments. In its deliberations, the Planning Commissions discussed and asked for clarification on the definition of multifamily dwellings, fire sprinkler requirements, and the additional height allowed for detached ADUs beyond what state law requires. State law requires that local agencies permit a height of 25 feet for an attached ADU. The proposed amendments go beyond state law and allowing a height of 25 feet for detached ADUs as well. The Planning Commission recommended that for such detached ADUs, the interior ceiling height should be restricted to 9 feet measured from floor to ceiling. This recommendation is included in the current version of the proposed amendments tonight, which are highlighted in blue in your packet. After the Planning Commission hearing, staff sent the proposed ADU revisions to the Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, for its informal review, and HCD only requested minor modifications, which are reflected in your proposed amendment highlighted in yellow. A few other clarifications that are not in your report have come up and should be considered tonight. And section 19.79030D and section 19.79080 cite the wrong government code. So staff is suggesting that we just merely state the government code, as these code numbers continuously change. And if we just state the government code, that's one part that will sort of be consistent with the government code, because there will be no number reference. And then section 19.79030 number 4, We are suggesting tonight that that be removed, just deleted. We did model this ordinance over recently approved ordinance in Novato. And, you know, the city of Belvedere doesn't really have master plans or precise development plans. This is not required by state law, so it just seemed cleaner to omit that.
Sorry,
Second,
Rebecca, can you, you went
Yeah.
too fast.
yeah.
Which one is it?
Okay, so it's section 19.79.030.
Land use, zoning and density.
Yeah, and then number 4. So on the next page.
There's a bunch of there's 2 4s. Both
Rebecca's
fours?
referring to A4.
A4.
I'm sorry, A4.
Okay.
So that has to do with the PUDs?
A4, yeah, it's for the
Correct.
PUDs. It's not required by state law. We don't have master plans or precise development plans. Those tend to be more for
Right.
larger communities like Novato that have these sort of big swaths of land that you can develop through a master plan or a precise development plan. We can leave it. It's not gonna harm us, but it's just something that we don't think is necessary.
Okay.
Should I ask a question? Just wait. Oh, since we're talking about the only PUD we have is, sorry. The only PUD we have is the land company. So I don't know how the PUD would affect what their zoning is because they get the same zoning no matter what on the PUD. So I don't have a problem getting rid of it. I just want to make sure that the land company PUDs are not going to have some kind of issue going forward with their, I don't know if they still need the PUD.
I don't think they do. I mean, we don't have development standards for the PUD. They'd have to propose one.
Well, their standards are the same as what they are now in the R2 and the R3. They just get to keep what they have. But anyway, I have no problem because I don't even know when they would really use that right now because of the change in housing.
Okay, I have a couple other ones here. If you go to 19.79080. R3. References a section of the municipal code that we don't have. We don't have section 19.34031. So I would suggest the language to read, the JADU is restricted to the maximum size allowed by the government code, because that's what we're doing essentially. And then in that same section, number 5, also references that this 19.34030 that we don't have. So I would replace 19.34031 with 19.79, which is this section of the code. So it would read, the restrictions shall be binding upon any successor in ownership of the property and lack of compliance with any provisions of BMC section 19.79.
Rebecca, if you don't mind one very nitpicky comment, can we refer to
Yeah, yeah.
chapter 19.79?
Yeah.
Sure,
All right, thank you.
yeah,
So should it be 19.79.080 because it's just relating to junior ADUs?
sure, yes. And then lastly, oftentimes we have questions from applicants if sort of covered patios and decks are included in the square footage of the ADU. And so we'd like to sort of add some clarifying language, which would, I'm suggesting this, an ADU shall not include covered patios, or covered decks outside of the unit's exterior walls, including any areas excluded from Belvedere Municipal Code's definition of gross floor area. So that it's clear that covered decks, covered patios, and decks are included in whatever the permitted floor area is.
So are we on, sorry, 0909?
That's not it. That is not in your code right now. So we would add that to the design standards. I can't hear you guys if you don't have your mics on.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you'd added to this section 19.79.088. 80.
090, the design standards.
Okay.
So
And
number,
Andrew, if you want to hop in at all.
Yeah, so I think another place we could put it, Rebecca, if you don't mind, is that we could
Yeah.
actually add that clarification to the definition of ADU
Oh, sure.
set forth in 19.79020. Because I think we're just clarifying what is truly a part of an ADU versus not. And sort of the affiliated patios and decks and such wouldn't be considered part of an ADU for square footage and other purposes.
so on A7, where there is some
A7 of what section?
design standards, A7 says outside deck space, exterior decks on second stories or roofs are prohibited. Would that be a spot where you would put it all together? I mean, and can we talk about gross floor area when we can't talk about gross floor area?
I think we are trying to carry through the sort of spirit of what we define as gross floor area.
Okay.
And we're trying to carry that through here.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
can count that as gross floor area.
Well, actually, I think what you're pointing out in A7, Councilmember Carapiat, maybe we should strike that altogether. If we're saying that they are really not part of an ADU at all.
Well, I think the purpose here is that we don't want roof decks
Okay.
and we don't want second story decks.
Okay.
There's a reason for that.
Okay, so you definitely. okay,
So
I
that's
see what
a
you mean.
design standard.
Okay,
And then the other is, I mean, I'm just wondering if it should just all go together or if it's two separate things.
I think it's two separate things, because I think we're saying what is strictly prohibited sort of across the board, as you're saying.
So
And-
what section did you say it should go in?
So I
These
think we
numbers
can
are
include
flying
it in
so
the
fast.
definitions
Oh, definition.
where we define ADU or accessory dwelling unit. Exactly.
Oh,
Thank
so you
you.
want to add a definition.
I guess clarify the definition.
So what numbers
Clarify.
on the,
Well,
so what would it
Is it
be under?
definition A that you're adding it to?
Yes.
And you would be adding to define what an accessory dwelling unit is or is not.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
So you're adding it to the accessory the accessory because this, it's all about the words. The accessory definition. So you're stating that it's not included in the ADU gross area, so you can't count that.
Right,
Is that's what you're saying? You
Right.
can't count a covered,
right. It can't be part of the
Patio or
ADU.
deck.
Yeah, it can't be part of the ADU for purposes of like setbacks.
so
and
then
other
it would come
restrictions.
under the gross floor area for the entire property.
I believe so, but I defer to Rebecca on that.
Okay, so you have a
if they're,
house.
yeah, if they're exceeding, yeah, we're gonna state that it is can't be included in the floor area, or it is included in the floor area of the ADU. Right, a covered, if somebody really wants a covered deck.
That's what you're trying to solve for. Just make it clear that if they do choose to have that.
Turn your mic on,
You have to
sorry.
have your mic on.
if you choose to include that, or you want a covered deck, it's included in your floor
Bless you.
area. So you're,
Yes.
in the definition, you're saying the ADU includes covered decks or whatever else you want to include in terms of what is contemplated as the ADU in its totality.
So you're
That's good.
basically
Yes.
saying if they have a covered deck or patio, it's included in the quote unquote 800 square foot of the ministerially approved.
Right,
So that
Yes.
would have to be included in their 800.
right.
Okay, I
Yes.
get it now.
Okay.
That took a long time.
Sorry about it. These
It's-
ADU
we're
restrictions
throwing it
are
at
always
you.
convoluted.
Okay, do you have more to add, Rebecca?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
I-
Yeah, sorry.
I apologize. There might be one more, but
Oh.
again, I'll defer to Rebecca here. I don't
Did
know
I
if you
forget
wanted,
it?
I don't know if you wanted to talk about the landscape plan section.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I forgot about that. What section? Where is that? In the
Oh,
Design
90.
design standards.
Yeah, section D under
19
design
D.
standards.
Under, yeah, 19.79090. Letters C and D. Andrew, I've had a little bit update since we last talked. I think what, we are subject to the MWILO. So in letter D, we would strike out the last sentence if the total landscape area is 2,500 square feet, etc. Because appendix D no longer exists. So we would just strike out that last sentence.
And did you have a change in C as well?
No, I
Okay.
didn't, sorry.
Okay.
So
okay.
that's the last one.
Okay. Anything to make it shorter? Okay, thank you. That was thorough, although a little quickly stated for some of us. But I think in the end we got it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so are there any questions for staff?
I have a couple of quick ones, I
Councilmember
think.
Burke, go ahead.
Thank you, Rebecca. A question, limited standard ADUs. This is in the staff report. It's not page numbered, but I think it's on the second page. I was just curious, I couldn't find the definition of that anywhere.
I had,
even
and
in-
I'm dittoing that one.
Yeah, I even looked in 66323, the California Government Code. Does anyone know what it
Defer
is?
to Andrew. I think it's a state definition. I know it's a state definition. I think what it refers to, and Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, is that government code section 66323, which
Yeah.
which I think is synonymous with limited standards ADUs, and it just requires that municipalities approve them ministerially. That's my understanding of it, but Andrew, feel free to elaborate.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I would agree with your observation, Councilmember Burke and Mayor Cooper, that phrase doesn't exist
Anywhere.
precisely
Yeah.
in the applicable sections of the government code. I guess it's sort of conceptually, I think what you already understood, that there are certain baseline ADUs that must be ministerial approved and some that don't.
Right. But we don't know what ones don't. So since we don't know what's defined as a limited standard ADU, we don't know how we would describe it.
Yeah, I think that.
So someone could come in and say, I have a limited standard ADU, I'd like to get approved.
Yeah, honestly,
Like, I don't know.
yeah, I think I think at a very high level, maybe
It's a
conceptually it's
unicorn.
useful, but it's not honestly that precise or that useful
right,
of a
so-
definition.
That answers my question. We don't need to.
Can I add some clarity to that? Just because I have a little bit of history. Is these terms that were used in the staff report, limited standard ADU, was a term that was used way back in I have to say, beginning of my term, 2015. And that's how they would describe what has become a ministerially approved project. And then the traditional standard ADU was one that would have to go for design review. So we now consider that one where they have to go for a CUP and actually have review by the planning commission. So it's an old definition that kind of has gone by the wayside over the last decade.
The only thing that's confusing is it says two new categories of ADUs. The state law now draws a distinction between two categories. So it suggests that this is something, a new concept, but you're saying
It's an
the
old
state
concept.
laws. Anyways, I mean, it doesn't seem to have any implication or impact, so we don't need to.
Yeah, I don't think that distinction is truly new.
So the other question that I had was for where the planning commission decided to go above and beyond the state law was for detached ADUs could be 25 feet high. But is it true that that's only on lots that have a slope of 30 degrees or more? So it's not, if it's a flat lot, that's not true. It's only if it's a sloping lot of 30 plus.
That is correct, and the slope underneath the structure has to be 30%, so you can have a lot that has a very flat. Has one, a flat portion and then a steep portion, and they get to put the ADU on that flat portion.
Got it. Thank you. And then on B, this would be 1979040, development standards and permit requirements for ADUs. If you go under B to B4, height limit, do we need to reference sloping lots here or not? So this would be an attached ADU. If an attached ADU is on a sloping lot, like, is there any contemplation for sloping lots and attached ADUs?
No,
Okay,
per state law.
per state law,
Mhm.
because we have it in our code, 19.56.070 does actually talk about sloping lots and how there are accommodations for, I think you can go up to 36 feet on a sloping lot.
For single family homes.
Yeah,
Right, so you're asking about, yeah, I just want to clarify, you're asking about.
Yeah, it's just
Attached,
yeah, it's an attached ADU to either a multi or a single, I think, right? If you don't think we need to, there's no contemplation or we don't need a contemplation for sloping lots, I'm good. I just wanted to understand whether or not that was true.
sorry, Kevin, I just want to make sure I'm in the right section, 19.79040 B.
Yep. B as in boy, number
B.
4. So it states the height limit of 25 feet. And I know, for instance, if you're on a sloping lot for a single family home, you actually can go higher if you're on a sloping lot. So we wouldn't allow that for an attached ADU, according to this.
That is correct, and that is per state law.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that it for your question?
I think that's enough.
Not really. Okay. Councilmember Wilkinson, do you have any? Nope. Councilmember Carapiet?
Okay. During the planning commission meeting, there was some discussion around multifamily dwellings and trying to do some clarity. And I'm talking about in the definition section, so it's 020. And I'm looking at M and P. And specifically where it says a building with 2 or more attached dwellings located, multifamily, a building with 2 or more attached dwelling units located in a residential or mixed zone district. And I think for clarity that when we talk about a multifamily dwelling, which is defined as a duplex, triplex, or more, that we should consider looking at adding the word located in a multifamily residential or mixed-use zoning district. and adding that both to M and P so that there's clarity where we're talking about a multifamily dwelling, that we're not talking about a single family home, but rather it's the multifamily zones. And it also comes into the same, adding the multifamily in a residential zone or mixed use zone in 030 number 3.
Mhm. So to clarify, you're suggesting adding multifamily in front of the word residential.
Right, because it's in we're talking about multifamily zones. And so I think we should specifically say multifamily zones are in, or multifamily dwellings are in multifamily zoning in our code.
I might defer to Andrew on this one. So where would you put it on M?
So just right in front of multifamily dwelling located on a lot zoned for multifamily residential or mixed use. Oh, that was on P. M. Again, just located in multifamily residential or mixed use zoning districts.
Is that okay, Andrew? Yeah.
Yeah, for M and P, if I understand Councilmember
Yeah,
Carapia.
M and P and 0303, where they just say, they're talking about multifamily buildings, and that's primarily in our R2, R3 and mixed use zone. So I'm just trying to make it clear that when we talk about that, we're talking about the multifamily zone and not confusing that with a single family. Because we make a differentiation all the way through between multifamily dwellings. And it should correspond to the zone in which the dwellings are in.
And I'm sorry, you wanted to add it to A3 as well on page 4?
Yeah,
That's fine, no objection.
okay. Then I want to go a little bit to discussion on 040 A4, where we're talking about allowing for the maximum height on a 30-foot slope, that whole section. And it seems to me that to try and just clarify it a little bit, because the whole thing before we go into the maximum height of 25 feet is talking all about the state mandated requirements for ADUs. And then we go into, we've decided, we are trying to be proactive and pro-aware that in particularly the R15 zone primarily, it seems, where there's a greater 30% or greater slope, that we could run into issues with a 16-foot height limit because they're not near any public transportation. And to save them the time and the money to have to go before a conditional use permit and the planning commission, we were thinking that if we could get these guidelines, that we would be able to promote the ADUs, but and also save time and money for everybody involved. So I'm just thinking that this whole section on the maximum height of 25 feet kind of needs to be like A and B, so that A is like all of the state mandated stuff. And then, so that's just the way it is. And then now we're going to go into, it's not an exception, but we're going beyond the state law, and we're trying to be proactive in our development of ADUs. And so I would like to make a suggestion that we just sort of do an A-B there, just so that we see that this maximum 25 is like something totally separate and only for that 30% slope. I'd also like to add the words that on the maximum height and up to maximum height of 25 feet as needed to allow an ADU on a lot with the grade at footprint where it is 30% or more with a maximum interior height not to exceed 9 feet floor to ceiling. And I just wanted to bring up a point of contention because I did have some conversations with the community asking with that additional height is, should we be considering a greater setback than the state mandated? And so I'm going to just put it out there because someone discussed it with me. Should we be considering, since this is going to be a greater height and potentially may have a greater impact on a neighbor, should we consider that instead of the 4 feet setback that we do a 5 foot setback? Since we're not governed by the state because we're going above and beyond the state law, so we can make our own rules.
Yes, Councilmember Carabea, I think I understand the intent of what you're proposing, but were you also reading some language about where it was needed or where it is needed for an ADU? Is that another qualifier in addition to the setback?
Where it's needed?
Yeah, I thought you were reading some language or proposing language.
No.
Okay.
It's just, someone said if you go to the higher height,
Yeah.
Maybe a greater setback would be appropriate.
Okay.
Just because, we're going from primarily in the R15 where it would be a 16-foot height. And now we're projecting because of this slope condition, because we know it exists, because we run into it just with new single-family homes, that we're going to run into this. And so we're just trying to be a little proactive. But would it, like to bring it up for discussion, I don't want to be dictator here, but would it make sense that because we are adding this extra height that we just ask for an extra foot of a setback in the side and rear?
I think it's up to council's discussion. We can certainly add that should you guys decide on that.
Okay, and then I just had one minor correction in 1979.090. And in the, was recommended by a planning commissioner to change the, in 090A4, change the word from stucco to plaster, which is fine. But then you go on for exterior application of stucco and concrete. Should the stucco change to plaster?
Yes, thank you.
It's nitpicky. And then I think I'll wrap it up and say that I'm looking at 19.79.100, which is the exceptions, and which goes above and beyond everything else that we've talked about already. And I'm just, I mean, I know that we've tried to structure it so that the commission, the planning commission really considers why someone's asking for an exception. And is it really necessary for the development of an ADU? And so the question is does that section need to have a bit of rewarding on exceptions and trying to give more of a non-discretionary guidance to the planning commission by perhaps bringing in the idea that whatever additional height they may need, which would seem to be the normal thing they are going for, would it also make sense to require that 9-foot floor to ceiling height with an exception so that it would again be a circumstance where someone really is going to go over that height. And that if they do go for an exception, they have to get a conditional use permit, which includes a full design review. And so the question again is that if we do a full design review, do we throw out all that 4 feet and everything else and say you have to meet the underlining zone? Again, that's comments I've heard from the community. Whereas if you're going to throw out the mandated, do you mix the ministerial with the 4 feet setback, and they get that advantage, but then they get the advantage of the taller height and maybe more square footage by asking for a conditional use permit? So if that's the case, do they need to then abide by all of the standards in the underlining zoning? So that was my last comment.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to respond, Rebecca, or do you want to wait until?
Well, I think I just have a quick thought on that one. I mean, the whole point of the exception is to exceed what we're allowing in the code. Right? By exceeding, you could, if you want an exception, you're subject to those very, a lot of design review standards, as well as a conditional use permit standards and a public hearing and a potential, appeal before a council. So I think, my thought on that would be we're limiting the 9-foot ceiling heights and that extra height in the other sections of the code. So if you're not going to comply with that, we have this application that you're entitled to pursue through the exception process. And that was just sort of my initial thought on that, right? If you're
Yeah.
willing to take that risk, then, you're going to go before the planning commission and potentially a city council hearing as well.
But they're
that
not,
was just-
but they shouldn't be able to pick and choose what code they want to use. They want to use the ADU code for ministerial approval with 4-foot setbacks. And they're going to go for an exception for height, square footage, whatever, and they get the conditional use permit, then they need to meet all the standards of that underlining zone, which includes setbacks.
Well, they need to meet
So-
the design review. What if they have a sloped lot and they can only make a 3-foot side yard setback, and that's what they need the CUP for? They're still subject to those design review standards, which are mass and bulk. I mean, I don't know. It's just my first thought, but.
Does it, I have maybe it's a question for you, Andrew. I mean, so we're starting to get into planning commission territory versus what I would consider city council territory. If there's this much surgery required of the patient, should it be sent back? Or is this something that, like, who's going to now draft the changes? It's a pretty material change between now and maybe the second reading. I mean, and
Rebecca,
is this jurisdiction, the jurisdiction of the planning commission in terms of coming back with a recommendation, or is this something we should be doing?
Well, ultimately, if the city council does want to have the planning commission weigh on a specific question or set of questions, that's obviously your call. But in terms of the amendments and changes that we've discussed so far, I don't think any of them require re-referral back to planning.
Okay.
Rebecca, are we on any timeline for approval for this?
Yes and no. We need to, we need to amend the code so it complies with state law, but we could, if we wanted to wait another 30 days, we certainly could.
Yeah, because it definitely strikes me that there's quite a lot of changes happening here. We don't have one of the council members here who I imagine was probably involved in drafting some of this. So I would suggest we push it back and maybe Pat and Peter work with staff to bring something back that that's more fully baked, because this seems to me as a non-planning commission without planning commission background, there's a lot of changes here which I don't necessarily understand, and I'd rather have that brought back with a complete staff report.
So I can say that Peter and I have worked on this together. And I think that the changes that we've talked about have been, pretty minor and just tweaking certain things to make it a little more clear. I don't think we're changing the intent of anything. The only thing I asked on that last 100 or 0.100 was to be clear because we have seen where CUPs come before us and they mix the ADU setbacks with design review. And it could always be that it would be required a certain setback. And that is up to the planning commission to decide when they review each project. So I received comments from the community and I felt that it was worth putting out. I know HCD is pushing us to get our ADU law. They've already reviewed our ADU ordinance and given us feedback, which is included in this. And so what we have, they have accepted with certain additional corrections that they wanted that are already in here.
And I think it's been reviewed by everybody on the subcommittee. So
Yeah,
that's already
Peter,
been
Pat and
reviewed.
we worked hard on this. So Pat, I'm just trying to sort of follow your train of thought here. I mean, it does say in that section that where exceptions are required for creation of an ADU, the planning commission is to look at the underlying zoning standards as a very most allowable exception, but adhere as closely as possible to the development standards outlined in this chapter. And my understanding of this section, we're allowing for the subjectivity, the discretionary review process, but it sounds like you're wanting some more sort of limited development standards here.
Well, no, because the exception, the exception, the reason why they're asking for exception, because they don't want to go with what is allowed and they want more of whatever. Height, square footage, whatever it is they want. And so I just want to make sure that it's clear that they need to go for the conditional use permit, which we know, and that it requires design review. And the design review standards are title 19 and 20. Our design review is title 20. So they would have to go by that standard. I just want to make sure that we don't cross over between our ADU ordinance and allow someone to pick and choose what they want.
I don't think they're picking and choosing. I think they're picking their process through this section. And if they don't want a ministerially approvable ADU, they're going to pick the discretionary process through 19.79100. And then they're subject to all these subjective standards.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to bring it out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of little things. One is on the attached ADU on page 6, B3.
Can you give me number sections too?
Sorry, yeah, it's, you know what, I didn't write down the sections. Let me just. look
Okay,
at-
I can try. Page
That's all right.
6, what?
Oh,
It's
40.
040.
Mhm.
B3. Under fire protection, it says a detached accessory dwelling, but this is under attached. So I think it's just the wrong word. It's listed under attached ADU, and then under fire, it says a detached.
Yes, thank you.
So I think it's just a minor
Yeah, I think it's just a
correction.
typo. Thank you.
And then under the same 040, let's see, it's conversion ADUs E5. And it says maximum height, a multifamily dwelling conversion accessory dwelling units shall not exceed the height of the existing building area being converted to an accessory dwelling unit. I think that's really clear, and I'm curious if there's a reason we can't use that same statement in conversion ADUs C3 and conversion second kitchen units D4. I'm just asking if we can use that sentence instead of what's written there for those two.
So you prefer shall not exceed instead of shall maintain? Is that
Yeah.
the language you prefer?
Mhm.
Yeah.
It seems okay to me, Andrew.
Yeah, I think that works as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that was an easy one. And then another just quick nothingness is the lettering is off on 080 junior accessory dwelling units. It goes A through D to J, and then it jumps to M. So I'm just assuming it should go J, K, L, M. So that,
Thank you.
yeah, that's just, you caught it on one of them and I thought you were gonna catch it on the other one, but it was still there. So I'm throwing that one out there. And then I think we've discussed the exceptions. The only thing I was going to add for clarity is in this, under 1979-100, in the first paragraph where it says, any exceptions approved under a conditional use permit must also comply with all design review criteria and standards, or standard, criteria and standards is, I think, the title of our 20.04.100.
So include criteria and before standards. All right, thank you, Mayor.
Yeah. I think that's how it's described. And then maybe put in 20.04.100, which is the actual code that they would be referring to. Is that necessary or not?
We could, there's just always a little bit of risk that numbering is going to change down
Oh,
the
yeah.
road.
Okay, okay. That's, I think, all I had. So with that, I'll open for public comment. Does anyone here have a question on this item? Or on Zoom?
I see none.
Okay, thank you. Then we can come back for discussion. And I think one of the questions was whether we were interested in changing the 4-foot state mandated code to 5 feet on just that one section where we're creating Belvedere's own requirements in 040 8.4. So since we have the option to change that one because that is not state law, we're trying to make up something more interesting for people to want to do ADUs. So given that there's been some concern about the setback, does anyone have any problems with it going to 5 feet instead of 4 feet, just in this one area?
I don't have an issue either way. I think it works the way it is. But I wouldn't oppose it if people feel that one extra foot is going to make a difference.
I would agree with that. I think as it stands is perfectly fine unless there's a strong feeling amongst other council members that the change needs to be made.
Okay.
If I could
Sure,
just say
go
something.
ahead.
I think we're talking about the 0.100, the exceptions category. Is that correct?
No,
Oh, I'm
040, sorry. We're in 1979 0.0, and it's height limit A4, where there was a suggestion
Oh, yeah.
of just separating those out into an A and a B, because the A, which I would support because I think it's confusing lumping them together. So I think if you did the A, which is the state, essentially the state mandated section, and then B, which is Belvedere's own way of allowing a greater height because of our steep slopes.
I got it. Yes.
That also would
That
just
would-
add in one more foot in case an ADU did go as high as 25 feet, and then you're only 4 feet from a neighbor. So the 5 feet would just give you that one little foot on the side to
Got it. Thank
relieve
you.
a little from that height. And also if it were to perhaps get in somebody's view, since it is ministerial, this is not coming back to the planning commission. This section is a ministerial section.
I mean, I'm just not sure why 5 feet versus 4 feet.
I
Sorry, 4
think
feet
just because
versus,
of the height.
they're arbitrary. I'm not sure why we're debating a foot. Is it just that some person in the community suggested that 1 foot would make a difference? I mean, it just feels like, well, this, as you said, Pat, there's been a lot of work put into this,
Mhm.
and now this is just an arbitrary last minute change.
Well, I think that the person basically felt that we should only do what the state allows and not do any kind of additional ministerially approved, and that if there's something that goes beyond the ministerial approval, that it should go through a design review process. So, and I think in the conversations the subcommittee had, or the task force, we talked this through, and it was actually my suggestion to, with the slope over 30, is to make it ministerial. And if we could get, the right combination. And I think that this, allowing the 25 feet, is going to help residents, particularly in the R15 zone, because that's where most of the steep lots are. And so, we're going to be saving them time and money. And, the thought is that it's taller, it could be closer to someone if it had a more setback. I didn't want to go to, suggestion is the standard setback, and I didn't want to go to that. So I thought, well, maybe if we give them an extra foot, it would give a little bit of breather room if there was something that was taller. So it was a suggestion. I can support it either way.
So-
I'm not wedded to it, but I just wanted to bring it out for a discussion.
Which I think it's a really good thing to bring forward, especially if it's feedback coming from the community. My only concern is that I know we also hear from the community that sometimes they feel that the code can sometimes feel arbitrary. And I think in this case, this would feel arbitrary because it's not after, deep contemplation by the staff and the task force. They came forward with this recommendation of offsetting the 25-foot height with an additional setback. It feels, again, I mean, it's a foot. That's why I'm like, I'm not going to throw myself in front of this train, but again, it does feel arbitrary versus if we really think it's an issue, then kick it back to the subcommittee and the planning commission and ask them to give us a thoughtful response.
Well, like I said, I brought it up for a point of discussion. I'm not wedded to it. 1 foot, I agree. What difference is it going to make? I mean, it was sort of a suggestion, a compromise to make somebody, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So then the only other discussion item that I had written down was on this exceptions. Do we feel that we've gotten clarity on that as far as how Rebecca is reading it, that if a person chooses to not do ministerial and they choose instead to need a conditional use permit, that would mean they are required to go before design review and comply with all the criteria and standards within that code. And that,
I'm okay with it.
okay. Is there anyone else that has okay, great. Then I think, did we address everybody's discussion topics? Okay. In that case, I just want to say that I personally am very pleased to finally have HCD's support our efforts to meet the state requirements while keeping in mind what's best for Belvedere. I think our planning director and our task force worked really hard to make sure that all of this is really in the best interests of our community. And so I want to thank specifically our planning director, Rebecca Markwick, and council members Pat Carapiet and Peter Mark for the truly countless hours that they've spent over the past 3 years on this project. It was a long time coming, and I'm very, very pleased to ask for a motion to approve the first reading of this municipal code, chapter 19.79.
I so move.
And just for the record, this is with the
With
amendments that
amendments.
were agreed to.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
that's the amendment.
During our
Yes.
discussion,
Yeah.
which I think we've all been closely tracking, but I just want to
Right.
make sure those amendments were captured in the motion.
Oh, do you want us to repeat it?
No, I just want to
Yeah.
clarify that it's the motion approved on first
Right,
reading
sorry.
as amended.
As
As
amended.
That would be
Okay.
sufficient. Thank
Thank
I
you.
make a motion as amended for the first reading.
Is there a
Second,
second?
second.
Second. Okay, great. Thank you. And we don't vote on this. Do we take a vote on this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then Rebecca, just a real quick question. How many more ordinance amendments do we need before HCD considers us in full compliance? Do you know, is it only 2 or 3?
We need, the sort of major ones are, we need to do our odds.
Oh,
Chapter
right.
22. And we need to add emergency shelters into. I think it's
Multi-zone.
zone, yeah. And there's a couple other cleanup items. I have a spreadsheet going and.
Okay, great.
Just so that you know, the goal is to have them all done by January.
January.
That's
Okay,
fine.
that's what I was getting at. So I really appreciate moving this one forward so that we can move on to the next ones. Since we're limited in time here, by the time it takes us 2 readings every time. So thank you so much for putting that effort in, and thanks everybody for sticking with it and plowing through. Okay, we can move on now to item 6A. Introduction and first reading of the ordinance to amend Belvedere Municipal Code, section 2.28.050, and approval of related amendments in the Administrative Policy Manual, Policy 6.1.1, to change regular Planning Commission meetings to 5:30. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, very briefly, Mayor
Okay.
Cooper, just have a quick introduction. Along with change of the city council meeting time, this is also a proposal to amend the planning commission time from 6:30 PM to 5:30 PM. The planning commission meets on the 3rd Tuesday of the month. Those details will not change under the current proposal. Unlike the city council, the planning commission meeting time is codified in the municipal code. We've included a minor ordinance amendment to correct this, making any future changes to the meeting details a bit more streamlined. After a first and second reading, any future updates would still need to go to council, but would only be amendments to the APM. Notably, this is how the city council meeting criteria is set up, so we'd be aligning the planning commission with that same policy. Director Markwick has reached out to the planning commission and determined that there were no significant conflicts with other individual schedules. But with that, I'm happy to take questions or provide some more background if needed.
Thanks. Any questions on the staff? No? Okay, I'll open this up for public comment. Does anyone have a question on this item or on Zoom?
There are no hands raised.
Great. Any discussion? In that case, can I have a motion to approve the first reading to amend chapter 2.28.050 in the municipal code? I need a motion, somebody
I so move that we
approve the first reading.
approve the, I'm reading there, approve the first reading of the proposed amendment to chapter 2.28.050 of the Belvedere Municipal Code. Do we have to do it individually or together?
You could do it as a single motion.
Oh, we
Okay.
can, okay. And then
And-
could I have a
Thank you.
motion to also approve resolution 2025-26.
And approve the resolution 25-26, amending specific reference to the Planning Commission meeting start time in the Administrative Policy Manual 6.1.1.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great. Okay, we are now on to 6B, which is discussion and possible direction to staff on the removal of historic designations for Belvedere structures and properties. And do we have a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Cooper and council members. As Mayor Cooper just mentioned, this item includes asking that the council provide direction regarding the potential removal of historic structures and properties. Chapter 21 of the Belvedere Municipal Code addresses historic preservation. It also provides that property owners may apply for designation of sites and structures as historic. To evaluate such applications, the code establishes that to qualify as historic, the structure must satisfy at least 3 of these criteria: architecture, design, history, environment, integrity, and listing on the National Registry. In order to receive the designation, staff presents the information supporting the applicable criteria to 3 different hearing bodies for their recommendations and potential approval. The first is the Historic Preservation Committee, the Planning Commission, and finally the Council. After receiving council approval, historic structures are subject to certain local restrictions. The code generally provides that the property owner may not expand, alter, or demolish a historic structure without the approval of the Historic Preservation Committee and the Planning Commission. As you may recall, in the past, property owners may have been incentivized to seek historic designation to receive Mills Act contracts. Under these agreements, the owner of a historic property receives tax benefits to offset the cost of restoring and maintaining its historic features. In May of 2024, the council approved an ordinance to discontinue Belvedere's Mills Act program. At the same time, the council also directed staff to begin the process of phasing out the Mills Act's contracts. Since the council's vote to discontinue the Mills Act, staff has received an inquiry regarding the removal of a local structure as a historic property. While property owners may wish to remove the historic designation, Chapter 21 of the Belvedere Municipal Code does not establish a process for removal. So tonight, we wish to receive input from the council regarding potential implementation of a removal policy. Council has several alternatives that are in your staff report. There are 4 outlined. We certainly aren't, if you have a different proposal, we're more than ears to listen to that. You could adopt an ordinance that explicitly allows for the removal of historic designations from Belvedere properties upon receiving an application from the affected property owner. You could establish a ministerial process for removal of properties. That is, any person who wishes to remove their property from the city's list of historic properties simply be allowed to do so. We could take a more proactive approach in contacting the owners of historic properties and survey the level of interest regarding the removal of a local historic designation. And staff could engage a consultant with expertise in historic evaluations to provide the council with a more holistic view of how best to monitor and preserve historic buildings. With that, I'm open for questions and look forward to your discussion and direction.
Thank you. You're busy tonight. Okay, does anyone have any questions about this historic designation, possible creation of a policy if people want to remove themselves from it? Rebecca, can I just, never mind. Anyone?
Rebecca, I'll just ask one question, and I know we discussed this offline, but just to confirm, there's nothing within, because obviously Mills Act is based on state law, but historic preservation is a local ordinance-driven thing. There is nothing within state law that has any requirements that you're aware of in terms of removing properties from historic preservation that are just designated at the local level.
That's my understanding of it. And yes, if it's only, quote unquote, only a locally historic designated property, there's nothing that would prevent someone from having that removed.
Okay, thank you.
And what we're being asked tonight really is to come up with a process for that potential that someone wants to remove themselves from our
Yes.
local one. Okay, so we're just giving you ideas. Then do you anticipate this going back to the planning commission to actually come up with the policy?
I think it depends on the direction that you provide. If you're interested in it being a sort of application that somebody fills out and Robert and I can sign that, then
Oh, okay,
we, or you want, it depends on the direction.
okay, okay. Sorry, any other questions?
No questions.
Any questions? Okay. And then I just want to clarify one thing. It is correct that homeowners of their own choice choose to apply for historic designation, and it's a voluntary action. We don't,
Yes,
we don't tell them they have to do it based on their home.
that
Okay.
is correct.
Okay. Okay, in that case, I'll open this for public comment. Does anyone here have a question or comment on this item? I think I see the chair of the Historic Preservation Committee here. Thank you, George, for coming. Thank you so much. And thanks for hanging in there.
I've been here before.
I know you have. I knew you'd understand, but thanks anyway.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for listening to me and hearing me out. My name is George Benos. I live at 50 Alcatraz Avenue in Belvedere, where I have for 51 years. So I've been here a long time. Rebecca did contact me, at least initially, to talk about the procedure and what people were asking for. And so I've given it some, at least preliminary thought. It's a complicated subject. I would like to say I'm chairman of the Historic Preservation Committee. And there has been, I guess, the assignment and duty of that committee to try and preserve the historic buildings in our community. And so that's been our charge for many years. I think just sort of anecdotally, I think someone who has enjoyed the benefits of property taxes through a number of years and is now finished with that benefit should not really have the ability to terminate their agreement. They've enjoyed the benefit of it. They may have passed their property on to somebody else. Somebody else may have bought it on that condition at lower price or higher price, whatever. But the concept has been really in perpetuity. I know we don't have the Mills Act anymore, so we don't have that incentive. But I noticed on the list of these contracts, there have been 11 of them where they have not been asked for and have the Mills Act, which means these people and some public entities like the Landmark Society have applied for because they wanted these buildings to be preserved in perpetuity. So there is a procedure that's in your report for someone who wants to modify or tear down their house under certain conditions, and it's in your report. So there is a way to exit if there's a change circumstances or if there are good reasons to do that. And so I guess at least for consideration, someone should think about, is that policy, is that condition, is that ordinance sufficient enough to allow people to, quote, withdraw under certain conditions. Anyway, I think those are my comments. I'm available for any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for our chair of the Historic Preservation Committee?
I have one.
Oh,
Hi,
sorry.
George. More, it's out of curiosity, how many times while you've served on historic preservation has there actually been an application for property that's been designated as historic that is doing renovation work that requires historic preservation's approval? Does that make sense?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So maybe Rebecca might be, maybe I'm not asking the question correctly. Property has been designated as historic. They then want to do some restoration work, and under our ordinance, they have to set
Yes,
that
that's
work has to
correct.
come to the Historic Preservation Committee. How often has that happened?
Well, it's actually just happened recently once with, I think, the person who wants to terminate the provision, and there was a change in the circumstance. There were different windows. I can't remember all the details, but it doesn't happen very often. I don't know, Rebecca, you may have some better knowledge or facts on this, but it does happen occasionally. And typically, I can't, at least in my tenure, I can't remember how many years, 10 or 15, I can't remember any denial, but there could well be.
Yeah, I can remember two maybe in my time here that are historically designated that wanted to do exterior modifications that came before the Historic Preservation Committee.
Okay, thanks, Rebecca.
And they
Thanks,
weren't, they were able to move forward, or they were told no? Do you remember?
The last
The
one.
big one that I'm thinking of on Beach Road was able to move forward, yes.
Oh, there was one, the big house at the end of the island. The huge house at the end of Golden Gate.
Yeah, for
The big-
the, yeah, we did that trellis got approved.
Yeah,
right? That
they have,
outdoor, yeah.
and that, I don't know, this has got to be 10 years ago, I just can't remember, but they wanted to, it's an old historic building, of course, if you know about it, you can see it. They wanted to put up some, I think, glass things around their deck. I don't know if you remember it, Pat, but we decided that it just wasn't consistent with the architecture, and it wasn't, you know, it was views from bedrooms, as I remember. It wasn't something that was essentially critical. So I think that we denied that. Rebecca, if you remember that one.
I do. But they're not very often.
Right,
Yeah.
they're not often. Okay, well,
Well,
thank
for
you.
your service.
Thank
to
you
see
for
you.
yours. Is there anyone else in the public who'd like to speak to this item, or anyone on Zoom?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. And I'll bring us back for discussion. Does anyone want to try to jump in on this, or?
I'll jump in. So I think we're in a bit of a complicated situation here, because I think the person who's applied or was requested removal, they were never granted a Mills Act tax benefit, correct, Rebecca? Because we closed the program before they had access to it.
That is correct.
Yeah. So I think in that individual case, it'd be really harsh to keep them in a program which they didn't receive any benefits from. But I understand what George is saying there, which is that people who've benefited from 10, 15 years of significant tax breaks, it seems like they should give something back in return, which is keeping their properties in historic preservation status. That said, if somebody wants to get out of the program after their Mills Act benefits have expired, as you described, there are workarounds to that anyway for them to do work or remodel, even if they're in the program. So it's a complicated thing, but I think I've going around my head, how do we do this? Because we don't want to create another complicated process for staff. Part of one of the reasons that we got rid of the Mills Act was because we weren't following through on our obligations to be making sure that they're doing work. We weren't doing that or making sure there was any remodeling work. And I don't think we should be creating additional requirements on staff or people who are in the program to jump through a million different hoops so that they can achieve their goal. My sense is that if somebody want, certainly people who have not benefited from Mills Act and want to be removed from the program, they should just say they want that and staff should grant that. For those that have benefited from the program, I'm a little bit more ambivalent, but at the end of the day, very few are actually, by the sounds of it, doing any work. They just have this definition of historic designation, but they're not necessarily sort of doing any restoration work. It almost was a ruse in many cases. And those people who do want to have historic designation without a Mills Act, they will continue to want that and they will continue to stay in the program. So my sense is at the end of all of this, if people want to be removed, they should just apply and they can be removed. Of course, they cannot do that while they're still receiving Mills Act benefits, because then they have a massive tax bill. But I think we can make this complicated, but it just is adding an administrative burden on staff and making homeowners jump through hoops. And I don't really understand the goal of that, because we're not really getting a lot of historic restoration work done anyway, from what you've described in terms of the number of times that any remodeling work comes to historic preservation is so minimal that I'm not really sure what the program is achieving. I know that was a ramble, but does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Kevin, you want to clarify it?
No, I'm going to disagree with it. I think I chose to step back and think about, well, first of all, I think there's two different programs. There's the historic designation and the Mills Act. Historic designation, I believe, came before the Mills Act, and the Mills Act was used as an incentive, like a rebate, to get people to move to action more quickly. And so if you remove the rebate, which oftentimes happens in life, it doesn't undermine or eradicate the initial vision and purpose for the historic designation, which is to preserve historically significant or important structures within the city of Belvedere. And so if you go back and ask that question, is that important to us as a city to maintain historic buildings of note? If you answer that question, yes, then you say, okay, well, we did go through a very thoughtful process. Actually, sounds like a pretty arduous process to get these homes designated. And so for me, it's like, well, then what reason should they be undesignated? I mean, again, if we're serving that higher purpose, which is we want to preserve important buildings, historically significant buildings, and we've identified those through a very methodical process within the community, well, then why should they be undesignated? I mean, that would be the question for me. And I think, it's a very high burden to put on an individual who says, well, geez, for whatever reason, I no longer think my house is historically significant or important. I think it should be a high hurdle. I mean, to undo what has already been done and done through 3 different committees opining and approving. Again, to maintain our community and serve this purpose. So again, it goes back to, do we think that's important, and do we want to continue to try and preserve those buildings? And if the answer is yes, then I think we make it hard for you to undo it.
Okay. Councilmember Carapiet.
So I also did some soul searching on this one. As a fellow council member once said, when he was uncertain on which way to go, he reached out to the community and asked people their opinion. And the opinion I heard is closer to what Kevin just described, is that it was a process to go through the historic preservation, whether their purpose was the Mills Act or not. They had a purpose to preserve a building. I also did some Google research, for whatever that is, and looked to see what other communities do for removal from historic preservation and demolition. And several examples, City of San Francisco, City of Oakland, including the County of Marin, have a very I don't know if I want to call it strict, but a very set process that you need to go through. And I mean, I don't think it's necessarily hoops you have to go through. But it's like this home is designated, and the purpose of the historic designation is to maintain the community we have. And I think if we look at even our general plan, that's the goal of our general plan, is to maintain the elements we have in our community. And I understand that there's, time progresses, and some people may not want to have that historic preservation. And I don't think that we should deny someone that opportunity, but I agree that there's got to be a process that they have to go through. And I mean, they went through a rigorous process just to get the historic. And to remove it, I think they need to go through that process and have a reason and criteria that the city needs to consider, which is a reasonable criteria to remove a historic preservation. And so I would recommend that, or my feeling is that this needs to be further researched by staff. It needs to go back to the Planning Commission, and it needs to have a lot of input from both the wisdom of our historic preservation group and also our community on a broader note, how they feel about it. And I think we need to come up with a balance, because everything is always a balance. And so we need to come up with a balance where if someone wants to remove it, what is the reason? Is it a reason that they should be able to do it? And I think it should come into consideration if they received the Mill Act, because we gave them great financial motivation for most people, not everyone, but most people, for multiple years. So I'm in the boat with Kevin that I think it needs to be more of a process. I don't want to get into the cost of consultants. And I think that the right place for it to be discussed initially is with the Planning Commission, with a lot of input and more feedback, both from our staff and from our legal counsel.
Okay. I agree that it would be a shame to lose any of our historic homes for all the reasons that everyone said. They bring a lot and enhance our community. And in a way, I think we owe them a debt of gratitude for retaining their homes under this designation, because it is so wonderful. So, and as Chair Gnos mentioned, we do have our code 21.20.0.070, where if the circumstances change, a homeowner can come in and meet with our chair of planning and go over what circumstances have changed. I'd like to see a process developed where should a homeowner decide they'd like to leave, I'd hope that they would first come in and go through that potential reasons that they want to do it. And if they have to do with changing the exterior or not, how to discuss that with the planning director, and then see if the accommodation can be made. I agree that if a homeowner has had the benefit of the Mills Act and the tax break that came with it, that I think, as our Councilmember Wilkinson said, that in a way they are paying it back to the community by keeping that historic designation. So I definitely support that. I would hope we would not go to a consultant and spend unnecessary funds. I'd like to recommend that we look at other communities if possible, or even just Marin County, or I don't know if Sausalito has. Many don't have historic preservation, local ones. So I don't know how many there are that have them to help us with this process. But how would you feel, Rebecca, about looking at the other communities for what process they use? And then if you wanted to, I do think either it goes to the planning commission and gives the public a second chance to come in and give their input, or it would come back here and give another opportunity for input once you've gone through and perhaps looked at a process. But I don't know if have we given you the direction that you need?
Sounds like you want me to go back and sort of review what other communities do. Should they have a process for undesignated or removing a historic structure?
Well, that was my suggestion. I don't know how others feel about that.
Can I? Rebecca,
Go
do
ahead,
I-
Sally. Yeah.
I mean, I think all we're going to achieve here is a use of staff time and planning commission time and everything else, creating an exit process. And it's all a bit silly because when they come and apply for historic designation, they say, oh, we meet criteria A, B, C, D, E, and F and whatever. And then historic preservation says, oh, yes, you do. And so now they're going to come back and say, well, now we don't meet criteria A and B anymore. And we're going to accept that. I mean, it's all, at least for the last few years, most of the applications for historic designation have been entirely to achieve Mills Act exemptions. And so they've created reasons as to why they qualify. And so now we're going to create this ruse where they come by and now give the reasons why they don't qualify. It just feels like such a waste of everybody's time to be doing this. If people are in the Mills Act, they have to maintain historic preservation right now. Applicants who genuinely just want to have historic designation, regardless of the Mills Act, will maintain it anyway. And so we're not really achieving anything, because I think what Rebecca's described is very few people, 2 or 3 in 10 years, have actually had to do it, have done any restoration work that has required planning or historic preservation approval. So we've just got this like artificial thing saying this is an historically preserved property because we've said so, not because there's been any work on it or anything else. It's just they get this big tax break, which we've now stopped, which was absolutely the right thing to do. And so I think if people don't want to be in the program once their Mills Act has completed, we can play the game and create all of these hurdles, but at the end of the day, we're going to grant them their exit. We're not going to force them to stay in something because they'll probably get legal resources involved, or they'll go into our code and find ways for them to extract themselves anyway. So I just think we're just creating a burden and a waste of time. If people want to be in the program, they'll stay in the program.
I think also, or Andrew, are you about to?
No, I was going to say something. I mean, you can go ahead, Rebecca.
A quick reminder that if our goal is to preserve historic homes and structures, we're not talking about CEQA, right? Where we have a mechanism where CEQA says if you want to demolish a home that is 50 years or older, it is considered a historic structure. And should someone come to us with an application for demolition for a home that is 50 years or older, we require a historical architectural report that reviews it under the Secretary of Interior standards for historic designation. And if that report tells us that this is a historic home, we would then go down the road of CEQA with that, whether it's an initial study or an EIR. So there is another protective mechanism out there for development, or, you know, if the end goal is to not to demolish single family homes that are considered historic, we have another mechanism to protect them. And Andrew, please elaborate if I butchered the whole CEQA thing.
I didn't actually have anything to add on the CEQA issue. I guess one thing I just want to highlight, and Rebecca can correct me if I have this wrong, but I believe we only have one property owner who's inquired about this exit. And so another potential intermediate step the council considers actually surveying or contacting the rest of the folks who've actually registered and see if anyone else is interested. Because I do wonder a little bit in terms of conservation of staff resources, whether we want to create a complicated process for maybe one, maybe two folks. And so that's just a consideration for council.
But I
So-
think it's bigger than that. I mean, I think it's, so were we just making it up when we said we think it's important for us to, you know, maintain or preserve historically significant homes within the community? I mean, I think if that was a goal that we set, which we did, we then went through a process. And I like to thank the people that spent many hours thinking about this, each individual home, whether it be on the Preservation Society or whether it be the Planning Commission or when it eventually came to City Council. And I don't agree with Sally that I don't think it was always transactional. I think, as you can see, not everyone even went into the Mills program. I think some people really did have the intent of preserving what are significantly important homes. So for instance, let's take one example where, and I don't know the owners, you know, and they're not, as far as I know, intending to do anything, but there's this beautiful home at the end of Belvedere Avenue where it meets beach, the Blanding Casino. It's 450, I think. I mean, so what if that owner decided they sold the home and a new owner comes in and says, hey, you know what would be great? I'd like to really take advantage of these views and I want to put nano walls across all stories of this home so I can just enjoy this wonderful view of the Golden Gate Bridge. Well, I mean, that sounds cool, right? Well, you just ruined a Julia Morgan home. I mean, there are very few of those in the United States. And so again, that's in the program that's historically designated for a reason. And so, you know, are a couple on this list, did they get on for the wrong reason or was it sort of gaming the system? Sure. I mean, that happens in everything, but I can assure you that this list has a lot of really valid, important homes that, you know, shouldn't be able to come off by just showing up at planning one day and just saying, hey, you know, I thought I might do this. They should have to go through a process where they were like, okay, well, what changed when you came and advocated for your home several years ago and said, you know, believe me, it meets these 5 criteria. Well, why doesn't it meet the 5 criteria anymore? Did that just go away? And so I think you have to put that process in place so we respect the fact that we as a city decided to preserve these homes in some way, shape, or form.
So we have one applicant who has come and said, I want to remove it. I don't know what the circumstances, maybe if there was clarity around why they asked for it or what they asked for that wasn't going to fit within the historic designation that they wanted to do.
They didn't get Mills Act,
I'm not talking about the Mills Act.
No,
I'm
but that's
talking
why
about
they
the
want to-
historic
but that's
preservation.
why they applied for historic preservation and then we changed the Mills Act. So they didn't then get any Mills Act and so they want out of historic preservation.
So they only want out because they didn't get the Mills Act?
Of
Is that
course.
what it is all about?
Yes,
That this is the only one that this is all about?
yes.
He was the only one that had been designated historic and hadn't yet got the Mills Act. And so as soon as he didn't get the Mills Act, he's like, I'm out of here. I don't want historic designation because I mean, and I hear what Kevin's saying about the longer term history of this, that there were genuinely properties that wanted historic designation. It is absolutely true for the last few years that we've just been churning through all these historic designations because people heard that they could get a massive tax break. And so
That might have been the motivation, but I think it really discredits the whole process
Mhm.
if you think it was all just a game. I mean,
but that's why we closed it down. That's why we closed the Mills Act down.
Then I think that individual obviously applied and asked if, I don't know if, again, I don't think we should be making a policy for an individual or for an exception. We should be thinking about it holistically. And if anyone went through the process and advocated for their home to become designated historically significant, and they advocated for why it met 3 or more of the 9 criteria, then let them come back and tell us why it's not. What changed that now this house, which was historically significant in their mind, what has changed that now makes it not so? And so, again, unless we are as a city saying, well, let's roll it all back, we are not going to be in the business of trying to preserve historically significant homes. We're going to leave it up to the homeowner to do that. And I think that's a different conversation. It's a perfectly valid debate for us to have. But again, what's before us today is, should there be a process? And I'm strongly advocating for, of course, because they willingly went through that process to get the designation. So they can't just say, well, peace out. Doesn't work for me anymore.
But they did no historic preservation work after they've been moved into the program. Virtually nobody has done any historic preservation work.
But you're conflating the two things. You're conflating the Mills Act with the designation. The
No.
designation says that you're going to preserve the home and you have to, you can't change the basic nature of it. I mean, and there are things in the code that allow you to, it's not that you can't renovate it or improve it. You have to maintain the integrity of the original intent of the design. I don't know the code word for word, but again, it allows people to continue to invest in their properties and evolve them, but you can't do it at the expense of what was considered historically significant. And so, again, it's, if you advocated for it at one point, I just don't think you should be able to just say, well, it doesn't work for me anymore, or I'm not getting the check I thought I might get. And so therefore my house is actually just a spec home that was built in the 50s. It just doesn't, to me, it doesn't
So
work that way.
going back to my question, so this one individual wants out, not because he was doing a project and wanted to do something that planning turned you down.
That is
Remember.
correct. And the one that was denied, I think it was continued and they actually came back with sort of less glass because it was more architecturally, it fit more architecturally with the property. And I believe it was 440 Golden Gate. So it wasn't that that one was even denied. It was they did a project, but it changed. They altered it.
They had to modify it. I remember they had to modify it from all the glass that was there. It was too modern.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't work.
So nothing's been
So-
denied.
And
I
they
just
got the
wanted to put
trellis
that out
because,
there.
yeah. So anyway, but above and beyond that, so we're only looking at someone who has not come and said, I have this home, I designated historic, and I want to do this project and you won't let me do what I want to do. So I want to get out so I can do it. He just, I shouldn't say he, she, don't want the historic preservation.
That is correct.
That's their only thing. So this is the only person that asking. So why are we creating a whole policy when we have one person? Why don't we make this person come back to us and tell us why he thinks we should let him out of the historic preservation? I mean, we
But-
don't have a process, so we should have a process or at least criteria we should consider. We
Well, you
need
just
some
go through the process in
guidelines.
reverse, but I mean, oftentimes individual use cases inspire new policy. And so if we think that nobody would ever, I mean, these properties, we're writing policy that should stand the test of time. And so, will in 50 years, someone want to come in and take the Julia Morgan home out of the historic,
No, I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. It shouldn't be just come in
Yeah.
and say you don't want it.
So now we know that some people may want to get out of it. We should, we hadn't thought about that. We thought they'd always want to stay in. So we should have some policy for, well, what process do you have to follow to get out?
And if
again,
some,
if there's only one person, then it's not going to be onerous for the staff or for anyone else to say, to have to deal with this, I don't think.
well, I mean, there's a lot of examples out there. They sat there and said, they gave examples, like if you want to come out, was there a mistake made? Has something changed? What has been the change in circumstance? And it's all, about the individual. But I mean, I think we need some basic guidelines on how we're going to look at this. And I think we have one person and I don't know how common this is going to be, but I don't think it should be something that we just sign off on and say, just apply and you can get out of it. Especially if they've had the Mills Act, unless they want to give us all the money back, then.
I would like to reopen the public comment so that I can call on Chair Ganas to come up and offer some words of wisdom.
Well, as I mentioned before, and it's in your report, there is a process. If someone wants to come and change the exterior of their house or do something, or wanting to tear it down, as I remember, it's there in front of you. It goes to the Historic Preservation Committee and then to the Planning Commission. It does not come back to as I remember reading it, does not come back to City Council. So there is a process. You can look at it. If it's not detailed enough, if you want to beef it up more or whatever, but there is a process and there are standards for changing the exterior of the house or tearing it down. That's not getting out of the report.
Right.
By the way, the person who, again, this was approved 2 years before the Mills Act was terminated. the particular property. It's just a fact.
Right, it's just that it takes a year and a bit for the Mills Act benefits to kick in because it depends where in the fiscal year it's approved. And so how
We
do they
have
never
to-
received any benefits?
You have to
And I do,
apply.
and just defending that person a little bit, and I don't even know who it is, but there's definitely been a period of time where there's been word of mouth, or there's been certain members of historic preservation have almost gone around and lobbied people, telling them that they can get big tax breaks in return for seeking historic preservation. And so my sense is that this person probably fell into that category and probably feels duped that he put his property into historic preservation, then didn't get the Mills Act and is frustrated and wants to just be out of the program. And I have some sympathy with that because he signed up for something that is different than what he actually got. And so I don't know whether there should be, if you all think that we should make this hard for everybody to exit, maybe there can be a specific exception for people who never received any Mills Act tax breaks.
Well,
Not
again,
me.
that doesn't affect people who
It's-
put it in, and then someone else bought it, and then there's down the line and all
You're
that.
conflating two things. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
Um,
it's either historically significant or it's not.
Right.
And I think, again, I mean, it's not that hard. It just say, if you want to get out, you could follow the same processes. We could agree. I'm not saying we're not deciding today, but one option is you could say, follow the same process of changing or demolishing, whatever is in the current process, just say you add, or if you want to exit the program, you have to go through that same process. Go to the Historic Preservation Society and then go to planning. Or we could make it, you could bring city council and it has to approve that decision. I mean, it's not like this is a big, hard thing to figure out. And we should stop talking about the individual because we're not making policy for this
Right.
person. We're making policy. They just raised a question for us to consider, which we are. And we're like, hadn't thought about that. We should have that in the policy.
And
I will
George,
say,
could I ask
Sally,
one?
in response to your, the committee did, and subcommittee did go around to looked at different historical properties that Rebecca provided for us and talked to the individuals and say, look, this is a process. Because I don't think we were incentivizing for the property taxes in particular. I don't know, but there was a program of our committee to say, what are historical buildings in our property that we want to preserve? And let's talk to people and see if they want to do it or if they don't want to do it. So there was a process of that, and whether they feel duped or not, it's hard to tell. Anyway, thank you. for
Okay,
listening.
thank you. Thanks again for your expertise here. Rebecca, what,
Mayor Cooper,
oh, sorry.
I apologize. We have a public comment online as well.
Oh, okay.
Ken Mueller?
Hello, Ken?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, so I just want to touch base on the comments I keep hearing about what has changed. And from a policy perspective, if the Mills Act is no longer available to homeowners, you can expect that most homeowners will no longer want to be subject to any sort of restrictions because it lowers their property values and their ability to maximize sale prices and the value of their real estate. If the Mills Act is reinstated in Belvedere, then I think you won't see the same exodus from the historical programs. Because there's a carrot and stick approach here. And I do hear a lot of talk about the stick and trying to keep historical houses historical. But the carrot for that has been the Mills Act. And by changing the policy, you've changed the incentives. So perhaps consider reinstating the Mills Act in Belvedere.
Okay, thank you very much for your comment. Anyone else?
No.
Okay. All right, so I don't think we're going to start opening up the Mills Act again. That one's done. I just, having sat, since I was and am the council person on the Historic Designation Preservation Committee, I did see how much work went into every single home they did a thorough historic review and found old pictures and went through and got the history, and they actually put quite a bit of time into it. And so, and because we haven't had anyone else come forward who is no longer receiving Mills Act, or is this the only home that didn't get it? Do you know? This is the only one. Okay. So everyone else is still in the program that was in it, or they have already finished their Mills Act time.
There are some that had dropped out just because they were already at the end of their,
Right.
of their
They had
t-
already finished.
and then everybody else is now on the taper.
Yeah, on the tape.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I agree that I think it's really hard to set process for one individual. I just think we have to assume going forward, if we're going through this, that there could be other people coming in. And so I guess what you're hearing from 3 council members here is that they would like to see some sort of process if somebody wants to exit. That the point of, a lot of people went through a lot of time based on their choice to put their house in, and that it may take some more time on their part to get out of it. So I think, Rebecca, that that's the consensus of the majority here.
Okay, I think that's fine, but the process, our historic designation process weighs very heavily on the Historic Preservation Committee, the Planning
Yeah.
Commission, the City Council, and staff. The applicant just has a couple page application,
Right.
and then the Historic Preservation Committee, the building official goes out, I go out,
Right.
so because we had a lot of applicants during the Mills Act sort of surge. So I think that's fine, but I'm just sort of practically thinking about, so someone fills out an application for removal, and so they're gonna list.
Well,
the
I think, yeah, no, I
for
think, right.
removal. I'm
I,
just
right,
thinking
I
about
get,
presenting you a process, but
right. I get what you're saying, and I agree with you. A lot of people had to do a lot of work to get them as a historic. I don't think all those people need to do a lot of work. I think now the person who's the homeowner and wants to get off it has to do the work, as Councilmember Burke mentioned, of they need to come in and they need to say why, what circumstances have changed for them, that, and not have all of you people, I don't want you doing all the work. All that work was done, hours and hours for each one of these homes. I agree, absolutely. It's not, I don't think that's what we're looking for. I think we're looking for, the homeowner has to do the work
But
of how they would, of if we have a certain criteria, if it's going to the Historic Preservation Committee and speaking to them, if it's that they have to go to planning and get up and say it, one or the other, not all of them, not all of them.
But that's still a time suck for staff in preparing staff reports and attending meetings for longer and everything else. All of it's just a time suck and burden on an already overly burdened staff. So we can do all of this.
I think it's important. I think, I mean, I don't think we need to overburden. I think that, I mean, I look back and look at the projects I remember where they were historic preservation. And I mean, some of them were even on design review approval by myself as chair, and they were changing the windows, and it was like, are the windows the same windows they're replacing? And they went, yeah, except they're double pane instead of single. I said, great, fine, they can do that. But I don't think that what we're asking for is like a lot of time. I think it's that the applicant has the burden to prove that he, she, they have a reason that is suitable to remove from historic preservation. I don't think it should be something simple. I don't think anybody wants to burden the staff. But if we get into burdening the staff, then everything we do burdens the staff. Everything we do burdens the police department. Everything we do burdens everybody. So, I mean, it's just part of what the city needs. And right now, we're talking about one individual. I mean, we may not have somebody come in and ask for this again for 10 or 15 years. I mean, so it's not going to overburden the staff. It may at this first initial step, but, you know, I think that the city deserves a process to remove from historic designation.
So I'd kind of like to wrap this up. So would one of the council members like to work with Rebecca on how to move forward with this as a way to
Sure, I'll work
move
with
this
her.
forward?
Happy to.
Okay, great. Then I'm going to suggest that Councilmember Burke meet with you, Rebecca, and figure out a way to move this forward. If that's
Okay,
okay
thank
with
you.
you. Is
It's
that
going to be
okay?
fun. It's going to be
Yes.
super fun.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Councilmember Burke likes to have fun, so it
Good.
will be. Yeah. Okay, thank you, everyone, for a nice, lively discussion. And thank you, George, for coming and helping us. At this point, Councilmember Carapiet needs,
I need to recuse myself from the next project because I live within 500 feet of the applicant.
okay, thank you and have a good night. Item 6C. Discussion and possible revocable license for private improvements in the public right-of-way for the property at 30 San Rafael Avenue. Sammy, are you giving us the report?
Thank you, Mayor Cooper and council members. For your consideration this evening is a revocable license application for new and existing improvements within the San Rafael Avenue and Lagoon Road right-of-way for the property located at 30 San Rafael Avenue. On December 17th, 2024, the Planning Commission granted design review, demolition, and variance applications to construct a new single-family residence. The project requested private improvements in the public right-of-way. The Planning Commission required the applicant obtain a revocable license as a condition of approval for these private improvements. Within the San Rafael Avenue right-of-way, the project proposes new landscaping and the replacement of an existing concrete entry walkway. Within the Lagoon Road right-of-way, the project proposes to maintain the existing driveway. Landscaping within the San Rafael Avenue right-of-way includes blue glow agave in 1 gallon pots, which would grow to 2 feet tall, and pink and yellow ice plants. The existing driveway on Lagoon Road would be maintained as is. The portion shaded in orange is the approximate area within the Lagoon Road right-of-way. Staff recommends that the findings can be made for the revocable license. The new landscaping enhances the aesthetic appeal of the property frontage. The driveway provides access to a 2-car garage, which relieves traffic congestion on the adjacent streets. And the walkway provides the homeowners access to their property from San Rafael Avenue. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have tonight.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, I had a question about the driveway. And I know that with the new 48-inch wide sidewalk, which is great, a great addition to Lagoon Road, and where the sidewalk joins the driveway, is that where it's cut down to make the driveway? Does that meet all the ADA compliant angles?
The project is also conditioned to meet the
Oh,
ADA
it is.
compliance.
Oh, okay.
4-foot wide sidewalks too.
Oh, on all
On both
exterior.
sides.
Okay, great. And did they, I think, I know the answer to this, but the current sidewalk gets demolished to create a new one.
Yes.
And so in the sidewalk, there's a large utility box right now in the existing sidewalk on San Rafael Avenue there. Can you see the large box? So if it gets demolished, what happens to that? Do you know what happens to that box? Does it get moved? Does it get replaced where it is? Can it be amended in some way? And I don't know. I know Tony Boyd isn't here tonight. Do you want to wear that hat for a second?
For a second,
Okay.
I would say that's a fairly substantial utility vault. Most likely PG&E is going to be really problematic to move that and costly. I think the project's going to have to do its best to work around that.
Okay.
Was that depicted in the that particular vault?
In the exhibit. Let's see. No, not in the exhibit.
I think that's a detail that Public Works is going to have to work out with the
Okay.
architect, property owner.
Okay. But from your perspective, that can't. Thank you. I'll call on you in a minute. From your perspective, that would remain most likely where it is.
Yeah, unless there's some
okay.
different information floating around I'm not aware of. I think can be problematic to move something that size.
Okay. Okay, I think that was all the questions that I had. Okay, if there's anyone here who would like to speak on this topic, anyone, if you'd like to come up now?
I was just going to answer that last question.
Okay, come on up. Can you just introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Andy O'Brodick. I'm the owner of the.
Oh, great.
The mic is on, the green light should be.
It is, yeah. it's on.
Okay.
Maybe I need to.
Try to
louder.
speak into
Yes.
it. Yeah,
Uh,
thank you.
Just to go back to that comment you had about the electrical service box, that's at the moment to stay. We've been working with PUC in regards to all public utilities, and that's to remain. So the new sidewalk will be built around that.
Okay, great. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
Did you have anything else that you want to add?
No, that was it. Thank you for your time. and
Okay.
That was it.
Thank you.
Any questions? No?
Are there any questions?
Where's the
owner?
accent from?
From Ireland. Just don't throw away from the old. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone on Zoom that wanted to comment?
There are no hands raised.
Okay. Okay, then we can bring it back for discussion. Does anyone have anything they wanted to add here?
It's a beautiful home. It's gonna be great.
It is. I wanted to say that coming out of Lagoon Road to the corner of San Rafael Avenue is always really problematic. Cars can't see around it. So I think by creating a sidewalk there, it's going to enhance the safety of everyone around that corner. I was hoping there would be a way to pull the whole thing back a little bit away from San Rafael Avenue, but with that utility box, I realized it's not going to happen. So I'm just going to let that whole thing drop. And therefore, if no one has anything else to add, I would like a motion to approve a revocable license for the private improvements in the public right-of-way at 30 San Rafael Avenue.
So moved.
Second,
Thank
you. All in favor?
Aye.
And I also, that it carries, the only thing, it's not under our purview landscape, but one of the issues we have in Belvedere is the landscaping growing onto the sidewalk. And those agave plants are beautiful, but they really spread. So I'm hoping they go toward the back instead of right on the sidewalk, because there's sections where people have them and we're going to have to go in and just chop them down because they've taken over the whole sidewalk. So we have to be really careful, or I'm asking you to be really careful.
Just on
Yeah, but just to keep in mind that, you know, all plants grow and we love them, but we want them to grow not on the sidewalk. Yeah, thank you. Okay, then our legal eagle here says, do I just reopen open forum at this point?
Since we raised that possibility at the
Since we-
beginning, we should just
yeah.
briefly reopen open forum
Okay,
just in
so I'll
case.
briefly reopen open forum in case someone was waiting. Is there anyone on Zoom? Okay, I don't think there's anyone here. So in that case, I will adjourn the meeting and see you all in September. Thank you.